if you have employees that are quiet quitting, you have to loudly fire them. And here's exactly how and why and when. All right, so quiet quitting is just getting a little bit out of control. Too many people talking about this. It doesn't deserve the attention it's getting. I think we're gonna give it a little bit of attention today, and hopefully we'll forget about it forever, because this is not news. This has always been happening. But I guess news organizations sometimes get a hold of us. But it is important. If you don't know how to deal with it, if you're an entrepreneur, we're gonna explain that. If you're a manager, you don't know how to deal with it, we're gonna explain that. If you're an employee, you don't know how to deal with it because your colleagues are doing it, we're gonna explain that. If this thing is just cool and you think this is cool, or you're curious about quiet quitting, we're gonna explain that. We're gonna share our opinion, our definition, how to deal with it, how not to deal with it, and we'll take it from there. Now, in case you haven't watched any of these, my name is Behrouz Momeni. I'm the CEO and founder here at entrepreneurcorner.com. I'm also the founder at BMO and SwordSmart. I'm joined with two special co-hosts. One is Ranza Nisan, who is our director of consulting at BMO, and also Lindsay, who is our manager of operations at BMO. Now, guys, we need to define this thing first. And this is interesting. People want to give us I think they're trying to define quiet quitting, but I think that's up for interpretation there. It seems like it could have multiple definitions. To me, from what I have read, how it is defined in news articles, it's defined as one or two scenarios. People who do the bare minimum and nothing more, and or the individuals who don't even do the bare minimum. So do you guys have any other definitions before we go and try to dissect this thing and figure out how to deal with this?
I think I had a misconception, but now that you said it's up to interpretation, maybe it's just another definition.
It is. I think so.
Before I kind of started digging and reading more into it, I generally thought it was someone that went MIA and just didn't want to resign properly and just kind of tailed off, hoping that,
out.
Yeah, the partnership's over and that's it. That's what I thought it was at the beginning.
Unlike
but now
California.
Yeah, now I've come to understand it's no, and again, it's not my agreed definition, but now I've come to recognize that it's doing the bare minimum, but the way it's defined, it's almost as if it should be the norm. And the issue is management and leadership of a company. And that's where I have lots of opinions on. So we can get into that later.
You also got to define the type of work, I think, which the idiots being mostly idiot reporters usually don't have half a brain, unfortunately. Like it's like you could turn a shovel to a reporter. By the way, not everyone. I don't mean disrespect. If you guys know someone who is a reporter, not all of them. But I think it is possible to turn a shovel into a pretty good reporter for your major thing, just because the stuff they say is just nonsense and they don't understand the consequences. Lindsay, any other definitions of quiet quitting?
Yeah, I think, based on what you guys were saying, it's what I thought was quiet quitting, people quitting quietly. But now that I've seen more of it, I think it is open to interpretation, and it's now become a saying with a lot of different things going on behind it. And like Ranza said, I think from what I see, that's the primary one is I don't even know if these people doing it, are they actually intending on quitting? I actually don't think they are. So I think it's just been tied to this word. I think is what you were saying, that people just kind of checking out or doing what they think is the bare minimum as per their job requirements. And in turn, this, and I think that's the same for me, wanting to talk more about that, this very anti-leadership, anti-management movement that I think has like spun off of what was initially called quiet quitting.
Okay, so we have our definition. Second question, which the idiot shovel of a reporter didn't really explain to us, which makes these things problematic, dangerous, and they don't understand, is what type of work, what type of organization are we talking about? Are we talking about Amazon and Microsoft, or are we talking about the, mom and pop's shop? Are we talking about the, CFO at Amazon, or are we talking about the factory working at Amazon? Like, we need to be a little bit more defined, because this is not as simple. For certain roles, I'll be completely okay if you're quite quitting the minute you get hired. For other roles, it's never acceptable. So what is this? What company? What size? What's the role?
I think that's the problem with it, though.
I don't think so.
No.
Well, yeah, I think that is the problem with it, is it has become, it's become too much of a thing. Like you were saying earlier, is it just a cool thing? I don't know. But I think it maybe initially was tied to a certain type of work. And now it's just become like, oh, it's so cool to like, I'm a quiet quitter, screw it to my boss, this, that. And now I think it's just lost all meaning or tied to any sort of job.
I think that's I have so many opinions of why LinkedIn can be problematic, but just one thing is sensationalizing a movement that is left interpretation, which, so we're already like, we don't know what the definition is. It's sort of like a meme, right? When it happens and everyone just jumps on it. And the impact is, like Lindsay, you mentioned, is always on, and I think it's mostly always directed towards the employer. And there's very little accountability. I haven't seen any comments of like, well, hey, if you don't like a job and you're being overworked, just tell them. Like, there's very little accountability on employees.
Right?
Well, even if you didn't want to
100%.
leave, just be like, yeah, like, why be this like passive aggressive? Why don't you just have a conversation? And I think, yeah, it is turning into a very anti-employer, anti-management thing. And I don't really understand where that came from, because, okay, what's an employer? What's a manager? It's become this like sub being.
It's a factory and they were being treated like shit and not being paid, all that stuff. I kind of get it. But even then, if you're doing the bare minimum, you clock in, clock out, well, that is the job. It's an hourly job. What else do you want me to do? Right?
That's what's confusing. Like, if someone's like, we have to understand, what is a bare minimum? So are you doing the responsibilities of the job? Well, okay, that's awesome.
Right.
But then
you're doing, what else do you want to do?
So, but the argument is like, it's indirectly saying how most employers are overworking, and it's pinning quiet quitting against overworking. And
okay, but overworking, let's say again, let's go to factory work here. You're overworking, you're completely hourly, you're not a manager. So you qualify for overtime. Are you getting paid for it, or are you not getting paid overtime? If you're not a manager, you're not getting paid overtime, well then, we're not telling you. Why are you waiting and being passive aggressive and being weird?
Yeah.
But it's become too much of like, as if this is like globally everywhere, that's just what managers and employers are doing. They're the worst human beings on the planet. And it's just that is what they're set out to do. And it's just lost all, yes, I'm sure there are bad managers, bad employers that do that 100%. To their employees. Is that the majority? I highly doubt it. I haven't met people like that, and I've been in management for a long time. I'm an employer myself. I can tell you for a fact that, why is my managers at manager level is because they have gotten to that place where they're the best at their job. They work the hardest. I can tell you for a fact their sole purpose in life is not to make your life miserable. They have better things to do. So I just don't understand why they think that's the image that's being portrayed, as that person's a manager. Their only goal in life is to overwork me and be annoying. Like, come on.
I want to know who it was. Like, who was the first person
who are you, Jimmy?
Tweeted, that posted, that hashtag? because I think it's beyond quiet quitting. I think like you hit it on the head, Lindsay, with this anti-employer, because we've seen a lot of other things that have been sensationalized on many platforms with CEOs and the whole crying CEO that was being talked about and ridiculed at a certain time. So I think all these other spin-offs are always directing to employer and like anti-employer and responsibility, and rightfully so. In many cases, the responsibility is of management and leadership, but it like I said, I don't even know what context it was first used. Like, I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
To really have more of an argument.
Let's unpack it, and we'll do if then different contexts, and we'll talk when you should fire them loudly versus, well, who cares? And when, if you're an employee, when you should quit loudly versus quietly, because that's fucking weird, man.
I think it encourages passive aggression, which I'm really not okay with.
So let's go through this. Let's start from something where it might be acceptable, and we're now going with the definition of a person that is doing the bare minimum. Because if you're not doing the job, I don't care what the context is. If you're stealing, you're stealing. Time theft is theft. You're a criminal. You should be fired loudly. The end. That one I don't think has a if then. If you're not even doing the bare minimum and you're stealing, like you're at home working remote and pretending you're working remote while you're just doing some other weird shit. Fuck. I know
people think that's funny, but it's not funny. Yeah, it is.
That's time theft. I hope eventually the criminal code will change to become a criminal offense. So that one we don't need to think about it. Now let's say our definition is back to people who only do the bare minimum. All right, let's go to that scenario. You are a factory worker at Amazon, minimum wage. You are paid hourly. You're not on any salary. You're hourly, and that's it. They will pay you overtime or not is irrelevant. You only want to do those hours, and that's it. Is that okay? Hell yeah. Whatever. Why should you have to do more? Like if you're a junior entry level person at a factory where the chances of advancement is 0 to none, like it's like slim to none, I would do the bare minimum. However, as an employer, I can tell you, when you have that attitude, unless this is just a temporary job and maybe you're studying in the background, you're amping up your skills in other ways, this is dangerous. If this is all you got, it's dangerous. You should do a little bit more, because then you could go up on the ladder and you're less likely to get fired. Think about that. That was the first scenario. You guys have any other ways to twist this first scenario?
No, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you can do the job, why are we quietly quitting?
I wouldn't even call it quiet quitting. Like I don't even think that phrase is right for somebody who's doing the bare minimum. You're working at factory work. That's
yeah.
What do you mean?
And I think that's the problem with it. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
You're not quitting. You just want to do the
exactly. And I think that's where there's a lot. It's like, this is the word quiet quitting, and there's all these branches, is the image I have in my head. And to take that one as an example, I think it now is putting too much focus on that hourly mindset. And like you said, there's examples of very hourly jobs, but I don't think people should be so hyper focused on, oh my God, if I do a second over, that I'm being abused, I'm going to quiet quit because of this. Like, you're also just a human. I've done that in, my low level jobs when I was a teenager. And just because I'm a human, I stayed a little bit later to, I don't know, clean up a spill or put some clothes away, because I worked in a lot of retail things when I was a teenager. And you didn't really think about it. Was I noticed? Not to blow my own horn, but was I noticed as somebody who went a little bit above and beyond? Didn't have that, oh my God, it's 5 o'clock, goodbye out. Yes, I did. Was it respected and definitely acknowledged as somebody with a good work ethic and played to my advantage when I needed reference letters and higher jobs? Yes, it did. So I think people should just.
I'm an employer. If If I had a factory, which I don't, if I had a factory and you apply for that kind of a job and I called your reference and they said this was your attitude the whole time, I would not hire you for a second. Even if they said during the time you were working, you were very good, very efficient, very honest. I wouldn't hire you. It was like, oh, there was garbage on the floor and you couldn't even wait one day, the one time there was a spill to help out or like something.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's weird.
Mhm. Just be a
But I
conscious
think-
human. Mhm.
I think for the relevance of this, I don't think it's most factory workers that are on LinkedIn making these claims.
Mhm.
So
We get into
I
that.
think, yeah, and I think that a lot of it, and Lindsay, you brought up a great point if you're in person, but I think a lot of this is stemming because the movement of remote work
Mhm.
and employers, one, not knowing how to make that transition, and then employees not knowing how to schedule, time manage, the combination of like poor management in remote and then not knowing how to time manage. Yes, I can see people getting frustrated. I still don't think the title makes sense and the definition is still odd to me, but I think that's where the issue is. And I think we have a lot of experience on that,
Good point.
That's
having
it.
done this for a long time, so we could definitely shine on that.
I think the reason we didn't experience this because this has been our culture from day one. We've always been,
Yes.
so it just didn't make
Yeah,
sense. It just didn't make sense.
But
Nothing changed
even
for
though
us.
we've not had the experience of like so much of like we're quiet quitting is coming like working over or whatever, I do feel that earlier on, maybe not so much anymore, because like you said, maybe we know how to manage it and explain it better. I do feel in the past we've had people who maybe start off okay, but as time goes on and they're working from home for a long period of time, it does sort of shift into I'm at home working into I'm, reversed majority of the time they're at home and you're interrupting them by this work thing that you
Yeah.
remind them of when you call them in the middle of the day at 11 a.m. and they're like, why are you bothering me? There's definitely have been
At
examples
work.
of that. I'm like, you're still at work. And they've kind of forgotten after a long
Yeah.
time. They're like, oh yeah, because they've kind of
Oh, shit,
started
yeah,
That's
my
true.
doing their schedule a little bit differently.
That's true. But on the
So-
flip side, if we're having to be like play the devil's advocate of having poor management, right? Not knowing when enough is enough or confusing their working schedule, like right with a lot of remote jobs, or if they're lucky enough, they could be autonomous in setting their own schedule. One person's end of day is not going to be the same as someone else's end of day. And again, I think that it's like I could see it in some companies, they did not do it successfully. They did not make the transition successfully.
Mhm.
So I think there is so now let's go to the people who are on LinkedIn. And this is all this is like a LinkedIn employee. LinkedIn is loving it because it's getting viral, getting attention, all that stuff. This is normally jobs that are knowledge-based type of a skill where you're applying a skill. It's not physical force. You're not moving things around. You're not working in a kitchen. That's not those kind of jobs. Those kind of jobs, when they were in the office, they had contracts that were made for when they're in the office. When these people transition to remote, the contracts stayed. Contracts in office, people still have, which is odd as hell still. Just like, I don't even know why people do that. Start time, stop time. Like this desire by some employers to control location and time to the second. When you do that, you could damn expect the employee to return the favor. Oh yeah, it's 5:01. Bye. I'm gonna go home now. And I'm away. Don't call me. Now those things went back. This is my hypothesis. They went back with those mentality, working home, and they want to have the same mentality, which kind of makes sense. So here's the problem with that versus us. So what is our culture when somebody applies? It's been always like that. Results per week, not hours per week. Doesn't mean if you're not a manager, we're not gonna pay you for like, I don't know, if you have to work on a Sunday, of course we're gonna pay you. As long as you record it, we have a record of it. If you make it up, no, we're not gonna do it. Because anybody could just make things up. But it tells them that, and we explain that, hey, and this is what a lot of companies do not do. That's why they're having problems. What does results per week per month, per quarter, means hey, every quarter we'll set up an expectation. We consult with you. We say, hey, is this doable? Yes or no? Yes or no? If it's a yes, great, let's do it. If no, okay, how about now? Yes, okay. Now you and us have agreed that this all gonna get done within a quarter. So now go divide it per month, per week. We're gonna give it a margin of error as well. So to be fair, and you don't even need to be 100% perfect. Another margin of error again. So 90%, 80%, whatever department it is, that's good enough. Done. Good, good. Okay, so with that attitude, if you know some days you've accepted this challenge yourself, some days are you're gonna end sooner, some days are gonna end later. Sometimes you may have to work on a weekend, sometimes you may not have to work on a weekend. It comes down to the individual to plan, and of course their managers, if they're not a manager, to help them do that planning in a quarter. But the expectation are now set of what needs to be done. In that type of a scenario, what is the minimum? Well, my minimum required is whatever we agreed upon. If I do the minimum required, am I quitting? No, that's what we agreed upon. That's it. Now, if something happens, again, shit hits the fan, something weird happens, website goes down because it's a remote, blah, blah, you're a developer, like 12 o'clock, can I call you without you being pissed? I think, yeah. What if I want money for it and I'm not a manager? Okay, well, we'll pay you, just ask for it, right? It's not a big deal. Record it so we know what's happening and that's it. But the problem again is if you have someone with a behavior, when you've explained this culture and they're not behaving where, you know, they're not being team player, when things happen, they're not flexible, you don't want them around. This is when you just fire them very fast and very loudly so everybody else knows this behavior is not acceptable because it's a team. It's not about not paying them. It's not about work-life balance. It's not about that. It's like having the discretion when shit happens. This is a team. It's not just the employer, unless you're working for Jeff Bezos, but most companies are not Jeff Bezos, right? Where they got 1,000 assistants. Every, chief has 1,000 assistants. There's so many levels of redundancies. Most companies are not like that. That's just 0.001% of companies. That's another stupid thing these reporters and LinkedIn idiots do that they don't understand. So in that context, again, I would say, if you've explained the results per week, it shouldn't be an issue. And if it is, depends. If it's just because, in terms of urgent matters, they don't want to deal with it, then that's not a right team player. They should just be fired. They just don't understand it after a few explanations. But in the context of somebody coming from an office where the culture was different and now you're expecting different things, that's the employer's fault, because they have to come up with either a new agreement, new culture. It's going to take time. That's their fault. I could see that happening. That's what's probably happening now.
Yeah. And I think it's also a mindset for the employee. Like when Lindsay said, if a spill happened and I stayed behind, I cleaned it up. She didn't think anything of it. What if her boss said, hey, can you come over here? Let's have a quick chat about something. Don't think anything of it. All right, talk to my boss. We joked around. We explained a project. I left. Now change the location. You're at your home. There's probably a psychological term to this. Mm-hmm. And you're at home and same concept. There's a spill. Someone gives you a call. All of a sudden now it's problematic because you're at home. Mm-hmm. And I think there's, like I said, probably some psychological association that's happening that's causing us to react differently, because home is our home. It's personal. Now I feel like someone's invading it, versus take the same thing, put you in an office, you stick around for 30 minutes. How many times did I stick around just having a conversation and a laugh with my boss? It was started about a project, ended up with joking, and oh my God, it's like 6:30. All right, let's go. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. I think, maybe it's, and that's okay. Like you said, that's okay to this is a really strange thing that we're having to all deal with now. Again, not for our company, we've been doing it a long time, but for a lot of other companies, both on management side and for the other team members as well. But I don't see why that couldn't easily be an adjustment type thing versus spinning it into this, toxic anti somebody else culture. And take what you just said about Jeff Bezos. I kind of wanted to speak to that. Well, after you mentioned that, why stick it to someone like, no matter what the circumstances is, to someone like Jeff Bezos? He's somebody who's worked very hard his whole life. He is those people that work 12-hour days from his basement, didn't have his weekends, built this massive company that's given thousands and thousands of people jobs. So no, even if you worked at a massive place like Amazon with a billionaire like Jeff, I still wouldn't have the attitude of like, well, screw it. No, I think he earned his position where he got to. Look what he's achieved. Look what he's achieved for other people. I think regardless of what kind of CEO you work for, whether it's somebody starting off, whether it's somebody high up, you should have an equal amount of respect, because you don't know what a CEO or any employer or manager has gone through themselves to then just assume these negative things that are being talked about.
Reporters, because they've never started a company, they have no clue.
I don't have reporters. Like LinkedIn is just LinkedIn. Like it's just people at jobs. Those are the people that I'm seeing that I'm disappointed with. Personally, yeah.
But you think Jeff Bezos gives a shit what people say? Not at all, because he laughs. He says, "Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right."
It'd be cool if you heard this podcast.
Job. Obviously, you're right. I'm wrong.
But it is hard for somebody who's worked hard to be like, you don't know what I went through, dude.
You don't. People don't.
No.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, they also say, I don't care. Like, why should I? Like, at the end of the day, I'm just working for you. So that the mindset.
We could unpack this, and this is actually more important for juniors. Managers usually understand that. That's why they're in that position. They're enjoying it, blah, blah, all that stuff. It would be very rare for a manager to do that. If they do that, again, very, if a manager does this, you're an employer, do it extremely loudly, because they're setting the tone for everybody else. It should not be allowed. Your culture is everything, right? It's a team. You're playing, watching a basketball game or a soccer game, whatever you're into, coach immediately, the person's like, get out. It could even be the star. Get out. After a few get outs, that's it. You're traded. That's what it is. It's just a sports team. In the context of sports, people don't go and be like, blah, 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 blah. Quiet quitting. Like, you quiet quit, you're gone. That's it. That means you're not interested. Why are you taking up space? But what I wanted to get into this point, which was for juniors, especially, you don't want to have someone who is joining the organization that is going to cost the organization, the employer, all the other employees, so much money in terms of time and training. Something people don't understand, that who is going to act that way. For somebody who is going to literally take 3 times as long to do something that takes somebody who's been trained and experienced, maybe even 1/5 of the time. Something that takes somebody who's experienced an hour could take that person 2 days, right? On top of it, you're paying them, but they don't understand. Oh, you're paying me solo? No, I'm not paying you solo. I'm paying you 3 times as much as your pay. You just don't get it, because you're not on the other side. So having people who understand that and are appreciative about the fact that the value at an entry level is the experience, the learning. If you're in a good supporting environment, those are the people you want to have. And you know what? They may take 12 hours a day to finish stuff because they don't know what they're doing. And if the attitude, even like on day one, week one's like, oh, 9-5. Well, no, I don't have time to keep at this stage of my business and the businesses of a lot of people I know, to bring in a junior person who's not willing to learn quickly and start contributing. Like, an employer cannot pay somebody and them not producing anything. That is just bizarre. I know it's like, we have these laws, this law, that law. Yeah, the laws are great. Abide all the laws, pay people fairly, blah, blah. But someone thinking that they could come to your organization, take your time and produce nothing forever is absolutely flawed. You got to fire that individual also loudly if they don't get it, and put in the set of requirements you require to bring in a junior. So it's going to essentially suck your time, money, energy, everything. You will never get back. So I would say for juniors, this is a little bit more important. And the interesting thing is, most of those people on LinkedIn, they're not managerial positions themselves. That's why they're shedding on managers, etc. Those are the people that you know what, if you're going to behave like that, you're gone. Now, I understand and I'm going to let you guys say the other side of the coin as well, especially runs up, because that's different perspective is good. But
Devil's advocate over here.
the thing
What is that?
is, whether you're in a large or a small organization, you could guarantee you're gonna get promoted if you take the extra time, do the extra things. At the very least, even if they can't promote you, you want to go somewhere else, they'll support you, so you can go somewhere else, right? If you're being weird and always doing this quiet quitting and listening to idiot reporters or stupid people on LinkedIn, you know, I had a stupid Karen comment on my post about this. You're never gonna go anywhere. You're always gonna be assistant. This was funny because this person was an assistant something. Like, you're always gonna be an assistant with that attitude. That's it. Don't ask him for a raise. They're not gonna give you a raise. Don't ask for promotion. And you know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're like, oh, if they're not gonna do that, now I'm gonna work even less. And then this keeps going. Eventually, they're gonna fire you, or you're gonna actually quit. So it never went anywhere. And then you're gonna go to the next job. Then they're gonna ask you during your interview, okay, how was your relationship with your? Oh, it was really crap because I was quiet quitting. Okay, then bye. I don't want to talk to you. Now you're never gonna get a job. It's just stupid. I don't understand why people are just advocating for it. None of these idiots are employers. Don't understand that. Well, you keep doing this, you're never gonna be employable.
Yeah.
I think they're too scared to talk. Like it is a very it's very much an employee platform versus an employer platform. And I think it's, like we mentioned before, it's a lot of condemning, and rightfully so. In some cases, there's poor leadership and you want to hold them accountable and you want to call them out. But there's too much of this, let me go make a post about it. I just had a conversation with the manager, and like I see so much of that. And it's very much like, do you communicate with your boss as much as you post about what's happening at work?
No, like,
Because at
or
this
you're
point, are you
just
just
a bitch.
looking?
That's what you are,
Yeah.
essentially. Right?
Or at this point, are you just hoping for clicks? Because I am seeing LinkedIn to be this, and I was mentioning, Lindsay, we were talking about this, like it's become like this advertisement tool of people showcasing their ability to make crazy viral statuses, and then other companies really jumping on the bandwagon of anything because it makes their company look good. So you're like, I'm getting lost. Like, I don't know where's their sincerity in LinkedIn anymore. I don't know if someone actually went through an issue or they're just making up a story for clicks, because it's, how does someone produce content every day? And that's what I see now. It just feels like they're blog writers. Everyone is just
this is
delivering
your work
content on
hour.
LinkedIn.
Shouldn't you be fired for making that post during work hours? If
I have no
9 to 5, you know what I
I've
mean?
seen that as a joke actually in many things.
Seriously.
But it's just, that could be another topic. LinkedIn is so there's so much like loophole, like so many things we can dissect
That's the
with LinkedIn.
algorithm,
Yeah.
right? It just likes attention.
That's the problem. But
It
that's what
is.
scares me about these, because that is not the, like, you can think of hundreds of examples of that happening in history where, you know, obviously online platforms are more prevalent nowadays, but, you know, the concept of gang mentality, this, you know, doing it for clicks, doing it for popularity, can go too far. And I feel like we're very slowly watching it happen. And how far is that going to go? That you're, yes, sticking it to your manager online, and like, what's going to happen next? You see somebody in the street who's a manager, and you video yourself like beating that person up and being like, yeah, like, I got a manager. Like, how far is this going to go? That's what's going through my head. It could go very far, actually. It could go, if you look back in history, I know it seems, I know I'm being extreme.
You could go back to the Milgram's, was it Milgram's experiment where the shocks? Remember the classical psychology experiment where the experimenter says, hey, if they get the answer wrong, you got to keep giving them more and more shocks, electrical shocks. And the shocks were not even real, but people kept giving people shocks because an authority figure. So now LinkedIn is authority figure. Now put it in the context of social proof, everybody's doing it. Man, people could literally go, people go to wars, kill each other because of social dumbness.
I think that unfortunately something like LinkedIn, which was initially for professional connections, has become like just any other social
media.
It's not, and it's and I see that because I mean, you even see individuals on there that are like, I can make your statuses go viral. I can make your LinkedIn content. It's like, wait, what is happening? I understand that it was just like pretty much a virtual resume and ways to connect with people, but Now, if I want to make an argument, for example, for, lacking cultural diversity in a company, I can just create a narrative and be like, the story, like you already see the ingredients to a viral status. Do you not? Like, see the quick little story, then you'll see the tagline, then you'll see, the hashtag, and then the comments come in, the shares come in. And now you're talking about cultural diversity and you made up a story. Like you completely created a narrative to push an idea. I mean, that's policy, that's government, that's everything, right? But I really think that this quiet quitting is probably very much correlated to sensationalizing and just really people wanting to be seen and just popularity. And then also it's probably tied to one of your favorite topics, Bruce, which is work-life balance. People wanting to separate their, their personal from their work. And that's why they're frustrated with remote work. That's why, what would have been an easy, whatever 30-minute conversation at work, now it's like, how dare you call me at 5 o'clock at home, because they have a hard time now.
But I think that's another aspect of the problem is the work-life balance, but what is work-life balance? The issues tied to it is just your general enjoyment of your work. And I think that's where this also becomes problematic, is when people come to hyper focus on like, I'm working and then I'm not working. This is my fun time. Because even if they didn't hate their job, I feel like you're gonna hate your job in a second if you keep up that focus in your head of like I need to not be working, like just chill. Like I said earlier, if you end up working a
You're not
little
gonna
over,
lose any Netflix. It's all recorded anyways. Like back in the day, I got it. It was like, oh, I had to watch that show at this time. Now you don't. It's recorded.
But communicate. Like if you're like, hey, I have to pick up my child at this time.
Passive aggression.
I get it. Communicate with your boss.
To me,
loudly communicating.
Yeah, passive aggression is as strong as any other form of aggression. I treat it as any other form of aggression. I actually think people who show signs of passive aggression can literally become violent given the right circumstances. So I take it very seriously, and it's one of the things I always watch out for. We have let people go because of passive aggression. At times, I was ready to close down BMO because we were like short staffed, and then one other person like in there is just now being passive aggressive and weird and trying to take advantage of that. You're gone right away. I don't care. Like, I'm having this business because I like it. I'm not here to make money. That is one thing, because it's business at the end of the day. It allows you to do more, and obviously everybody wants money. That's all cool. But that's not the only reason. So people don't understand. A lot of employers, unlike what people think, it is not the reason. Money is not the number one reason. Is it one of the major reasons? Yes, but usually it's not the number one reason. And depending on the type of employer you have, like I said, if you come to us and you do this kind of stuff, like immediately you're fired. Like, I'd rather close down BMO than having somebody who could be dangerous, violent. What are some signs? And it also shows lack of maturity, by the way, because when you're a child, you're very passive aggressive. That's okay. But when you're an adult, in most circumstances, it is not okay to be passive aggressive, especially in this type of a scenario. So, for example, hey, you got some I don't know, you have you want to watch a show. Actually, you know what? It doesn't matter what the issue. I want to watch a show at 5 o'clock. Okay, did you communicate that with me, or you just got upset about it? How do I know? Do I read minds? No, I don't. So you're being passive aggressive if you're being weird and getting angry that night. 2, is it happening all the time, or is it just like once or twice? If it's just once or twice, then that's not acceptable at all. Let them go. But if it's happening all the time, have you communicated this with the person? Are they making plans? Have they say, hey, we're hiring, we're doing our best? Then you gotta decide, are you gonna wait or are you gonna bounce? If you're gonna bounce, let them know so they find somebody else, right? Don't be passive aggressive again. Because sometimes even if you do, you have to understand as a mature adult that the employer may not be able to be in a position to snap their finger and give you your wishes.
Mhm.
Maybe like 2 people quit in your department, all of a sudden, yeah, you're overworked. But at the very least, you could ask them, hey, can I get compensated during this time? If you're not getting paid overtime, ask. Because then they're going to be like, oh yeah, record your time. I didn't even realize you were overworking. How can I know? Especially in a remote. How would I know? You're not, I don't see you, right? People who have maturity of thought understand, they do this. People who don't become passive aggressive, weird, they go talk behind your back, they quit, they write a negative review. You're like, what? Where did this come from? This was because this was happening. Why didn't they say anything? Oh,
Yeah.
because they didn't feel like it. No, well, okay, if they didn't feel like it, that means they don't have maturity of thought and they were passive aggressive. If they weren't aggressive, at least they wouldn't write a negative review for you, or they wouldn't say fuck you when they left, right? Fuck you, by the way, is not just words. They could, a lot of people show it in their actions. The way they quit, you know, they just give like no notice, little notice, not the proper notice, go talk behind your back. It could be like so many different forms. Or like people saying, you know, you do we're good. We actually do a lot of one-on-ones. A lot of employers don't, not to this frequency. And you do, like, so for example, we usually do them every 3 months or so. And you say, hey, how's it going? And like, oh, I'm angry at the level. Like, wait, you waited 3 months to tell me?
Yeah.
Why didn't you say anything? Yes, it's a one-on-one, but not if you're that angry that you're about to quit. You're being passive aggressive again.
But that's a good point, because on the flip side, as managers or as leadership, it's also our responsibility to recognize if someone doesn't feel comfortable coming to us, what changes do we have to make? You know, what's the
But if they
culture?
don't tell you, you wouldn't even know there's an issue, right?
No, 100%. But if it's like a lot of people, then it's like,
Well, then it's an
luckily the
organization issue.
feedback. Yeah. We're lucky that we're like very feedback driven and like we're always having these interactions, but there are probably some companies that limit that interaction window of when you get to talk to manager. And it's like only during performance review. I'm going to tell you what's wrong. And I never have given you praise. And now I'm going to just lay it all on you. Do you have any questions? And you're just like, well, let me just digest all this feedback because I haven't heard from you throughout this entire process. Now you've told me you have an issue with this. And then you have that employee then now becoming resentful, bottling that up. And guess what they do? They're going to go on LinkedIn and then create a nice little post and they're going to post it because they don't feel comfortable. So 100%, I think people are too afraid to communicate, but on the flip side, you can say, hey, what could we do to make people more comfortable to communicate? And we're lucky enough where we're always constantly like interacting, probably annoyingly, with people, and we're trying to make sure people are good and checking in with them. But I don't think some people do that. I really don't think some organizations.
No, they don't. Again, it's also harder when it's remote.
Yeah. The adjustment.
And you don't see people.
And you don't see people, and I think there is a lot of assumptions that fly around when you're like that. Like the examples you were giving earlier, like people just don't know. Like I don't know how long that task took you. If you had, said, oh, I thought this was going to take this long and it took longer. Like those are just conversations. And I don't know whether it is with the exchange to remote or whether that just happens in normal office environments where people are just too scared to communicate. But it is just so important. Mm-hmm.
Guys, any final thoughts? I think we dissected this many different ways for employers and employees. If nothing else,
stop saying quiet quitting.
It doesn't make any sense.
Just honestly does not make sense.
I think go enjoy your job. I think don't hyper focus on it. You are going to hate your job if you continue that narrative in your head. But
it's
you're human.
Being a good person in whatever context, even if it's a temporary job, is the key, is your responsibilities. And it's the thing that's going to get you to the next level. And you owe it to yourself to be a mature, understanding, flexible adult. Whether you're an employer or an employee, it doesn't matter. No matter what the idiot reporter or LinkedIn told you, it doesn't matter. Like common sense.
But I think that is important, especially, and I meant to bring that up earlier. I know we're kind of wrapping up, but yes, there may be positions that you're in where you don't just act above and beyond because there's the opportunity for promotion. Because I know in a lot of cases that is not an opportunity. My previous job was like that. There was absolutely zero option for moving up. That didn't exist in the position that I was in, but it doesn't mean that you can't fulfill yourself, even if you're not doing it for somebody else to get that praise, to get that raise. You will be happier, doing the absolute best you can in a job. You'll just be happier as a person and in that role. Working is the majority of your time regardless. So you might as well just be happy doing it. Yeah.
Otherwise, like, what are you gonna do? Like, people get bored and depressed anyways when there's like they win lotteries, they usually lose it. That's what happens. Like, you brought this up again. I worked somewhere for 8 years without a raise or a promotion. It was one of my best jobs ever.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, come on, just get a job, even if it's like an entry-level position. You could find something that is fun, you like, you enjoy, so that it could fulfill your second thing if you're pursuing something else. I do not see any scenario where the LinkedIn Karen is ever going to win, ever. Whether it's a factory work or you're this chief whatever at somewhere. Like, this is just dumb.
Yeah. I would say my takeaways for anyone listening, if you're on the employee end, is if you're finding that this quiet quitting movement resonates with you, then like pause and just evaluate. Have you communicated? Have you told and given feedback on your circumstances that you're unhappy? Really like take some sort of accountability first and just try to see like, or maybe you just hate this job and you're finding everything is pissing you off about it. So you're going to pick everything apart. Maybe you don't like the people you work with, so you're going to do the same thing. I just quit and then loudly quit. Don't even
proper notice and get out.
Exactly. And then I guess
from somebody else too.
Yeah, that's another thing, right? Opportunities that are lost for other people. And then on the other end, for employers, the only thing I would recommend is, again, see what culture you are fostering or lacking in areas where your people are resonating with quiet quitting. And first of all, if people are doing their responsibilities, why do they think that that's a bad thing? Are you overworking them? And, are we identifying this, picking up the garbage and doing things versus overworking someone? And, do we have a good rapport with our team? Like, again, same thing with like, just pause. Don't just jump on a bandwagon. If you're like, I'm good, our company does good, I don't agree with this philosophy, stop fueling it, because it's so confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. For those of you watching, thanks so much for watching another episode of our podcast, or if you're listening, watching this, wherever you're watching this, listening to it, please subscribe and share it with a friend who may enjoy this as well. Especially if you could send this to anyone who is just adamant advocate of this, send them this, piss them off. I don't mind at all. So hopefully they'll get us going viral by sharing this everywhere. Nah, no, I'm joking. Obviously, if you also have any questions, ask us in a comment. Let us know about your experience, and hopefully we'll talk to you during the next episode. Thanks so much again, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.